We're standing here in front of one of the finest cars of the 1930s, a 1931 Marmon 16, one of 2 commercially produced V16s ever made. So I read that there were only 2 commercially manufactured V16s ever.
That's right, the Cadillac and the Marmon.
And so which one of those was better?
You'd have to say that the Marmon was a better engine.
Okay, like what did Marmon do that gave them the edge on Cadillac?
Cadillac was a much earlier type design. It was basically 2 straight 8s on the same crankcase. The Marmon was a more modern design. It was a single casting. It was also a copper aluminum alloy.
With each new release, they got more and more innovative, always trying to perfect the lightweight aluminum design of the engine. Admittedly, aluminum engine blocks did have their problems. At that time, aluminum was trickier to cast, but Howard Marmon was determined. He knew he was onto something and he never fully gave up on aluminum.
Using aluminum in the engines did give Marmon fits in the early days, but he refined the process until he ultimately came up with an aluminum copper alloy that makes this engine. He also used steel sleeve liners for the pistons.
Oh, okay.
That eliminated one of the significant problems of having an aluminum block.
And so what kind of weight savings are we talking about here?
The average Marmon 16 weighed about 600 pounds less than the average Cadillac V16.
That's significant. That is significant. This thing's got to be able to crank up pretty fast.
It does. It's a fast car, and we have the certificate to prove it.
Oh, really?
Every Marmon 16 that came off the line had to go to the Indianapolis Speedway. They put a test body on the chassis that simulated the weight of the actual car, and every chassis was driven in 210 miles at increasing speeds until the last 10 miles were at least 105 miles per hour. Marmon actually won the first Indianapolis 500 in 1911.
So this is a V16, so this is kind of the apex of the cylinder war. So what led us here? How did we get all the way up to that many cylinders in a car?
Dan, it seems like the entire history of the automobile is a series of wars of some kind. There were power wars, speed wars, price wars, luxury wars. There was even a cylinder war. The early cars normally had 1 or 2 cylinders. They were primitive engines, relatively speaking. That grew into 4-cylinder and 6-cylinder engines. Cars got bigger and engines got more powerful. Then came 8 cylinders. And in the 1930s, a lot of luxury cars were powered by V12s. But somebody had to do it eventually. Somebody had to come up with a V16.
Between the Marmon and the Cadillac, do you know which one sold more?
Cadillac kind of had the jump on Marmon. They introduced their engine in 1930. The Marmon came a year later. And even then, the Marmon was late to get into production. They didn't produce a car until finally April of 1931.
Oh.
By that time, the Cadillac had been making them for almost a year and a half.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And the Imperial 16, as they called it, had become an icon.
And I would assume kind of going into the Depression years, a luxury car like this probably was not the top of anybody's buy list at that point.
It was bad timing, Dan, all the way. As Depression was in full swing, this was not the best time to be introducing a high-priced luxury car.
It's got all the modern finishings. It's got the smooth lines. It's got the beautiful chrome plating. I can see on the inside of the interior, it is very modern, very Art Deco. I mean, this car would hold up today.
It would, and it's also very tastefully appointed. If you look at the interior, it's not ostentatious. It's just very nice.
Exactly. This is like, I mean, we're in the 30s. We're at the point where these cars are more almost art than they are like just a tool or something to be used. It's something to be admired.
Exactly right, that they were designed by artists and built by artisans.
So looking at the front end of this car, it is beautiful. It is elegant, sleek, even down to the hood ornament is it's more muted in design than I've seen others of the 30s.
Less ostentatious.
But it is more elegant, I would say. And one of the big standout things that I'm seeing is that this radiator looks much sleeker. It looks different than other ones.
Well, it should, because what you're looking at here, Dan, is actually louvers. These are thermostatically controlled. They're closed right now because the engine's cold. But as the engine heats up, the thermostat opens these louvers for additional cooling. And here next to the hood, you'll see what look like little doors.
Oh.
They are little doors. Pull one open. Ah, there you go. That's additional cooling for the engine.
That's very fancy.
We have 2 side-mounted spare tires mounted in the fenders.
Looking ritzy.
And this is a convertible sedan. The top comes down. And when the top is down, this pillar, it's called a B pillar, A pillar, these come out. You can remove them so that there's nothing above the door line. It's very sleek.
That is very sleek.
Dan, there's not a lot you can say about the interior of this car because it speaks for itself. It's simply elegant. It doesn't have to shout, I am classy, because it is.
It really is. I mean, it's absolutely gorgeous. It's the modern chrome, the grays, the blacks. This would hold up today.
It would. We have the normal controls and the normal dash gauges, including a Jaeger 8-day clock.
Oh, that is my favorite medicinally flavored liqueur.
And we have a little sign that says Marmon 16 just in case we forget somehow where we are.
It would be hard to forget.
And don't forget, we're in a convertible. When the top goes down, the price goes up.
That's what I say to all my clients.
It's a fast, classy, luxurious car. It just feels like it's itching to go.
I would love to feel what this thing is like on the road.
Do you think we ought to?
I think we should.
Why don't we?
Let's do it.
Well, Dan, you look like you're ready for a little ride.
I'm ready to go. Let's do it.
I'm ready too. Let's start this car up.
This car feels premium. So this would be one of the top of the line cars of the 30s.
Absolutely, it certainly was. And one of the best engineered also.
We're riding with the top up right now to protect us from the deadly sun.
Yep.
But
Being saved from the UV.
she feels lovely. So from a driving perspective, how does this car drive compared to some of the other great 30s cars?
Oh, it's very nice. The steering is very tight in this car. The ride is very smooth. It has a synchronized transmission, which is something we're spoiled in this car. We don't get many of those. This car weighs still, even with all that aluminum, it weighs 5,400 pounds. So that's where you get the nice, stable ride and the feeling of luxury.
I mean, you're somewhere in between Art Deco and pure gangster. The Marmon 16 is widely regarded as one of the finest cars of the 1930s, and the Fountainhead Antique Auto Museum is lucky enough to have not just one, but 2 Marmon 16s in our collection, and we are very excited to share them with you.
We've got tons of new stories coming out, tons of new cars, new fashion. Well, new old fashion, but we are excited to share it all with you. Tell us what you want to see. We are excited to hear from you, and we're excited to show you what we got going on. So join us on our journey. We'll see you soon.
And almost all of the stories that you'll hear are factual.
Almost.
Almost.